as soon as everyone's around. So sorry about all the technical issues there. It's always quite hard. It's quite a new venture for us. So we're trying to work out all the ins and outs of all of our technical things. So I hope you're all still here. So just wait for a few more people to join us and then we'll crack on with the painting. So I hope everyone's well and enjoying their time painting and things and just relaxing. So we need to have a canvas ready and we also need to have some paints on our palette. So I'll go through the paints in a second, but we also need a cup of water, a bit clearer than what mine is. So I would go for some water in a pot or a jar or something that you've got handy. And you also want 3 paintbrushes as well. So I'll wait for a few more people to join in and then we'll crack on with the paints and the painting. So if you are logged in, it'd be really great if you could just comment with a little hi. You need to be logged into your YouTube account or your Google account. So yeah, whenever you log in, just put a little comment and say hi. I think we're waiting for a few more people. So make sure you've got all your paints and things ready while we're waiting. So we've got 2 people. So when you're ready, just put a little comment in the comment section just so I know who we've got, and then we will get started when I can see that everyone's here. So when you're ready, we will start. So if you are logged into a YouTube account, you can comment in the comment section. It's a good way for us to chat to each other. So if you've got any questions throughout the event, then feel free to comment as much as you need to. And yeah, I can help you out as much as I can. So my name's Becky. So thank you for joining us for our Mystic Mog. Sorry about all the technical issues and things that we've had, but I'm hoping that video will be fine for the whole event. So we need to make sure we've got all the right paints on our palette. So we need to have black, red, blue, white and yellow. If you have a purple already, then I would definitely use purple rather than the red and blue, just because it comes out much, much brighter. Or you can completely change the painting and do whatever colour you like. So you don't have to do purple for the background. You can do blue, you could do a nice orange back, you can do whatever you like. So we need to have these colours if you're going to do the same thing as me. And you want to spread them out on your palette. So I would do about 10 piece size of each paint. And we need to also have 3 paintbrushes. So if you have the brush party set, then you want to have the large brush, the smaller cropped brush, and then a number 6 rounded brush. You want these 3. But if you don't have a brush party set, then you just need a large brush of some sort for the background and then a slightly smaller brush for all of the details, because it'll be very hard to do all those little details in the face with a large background brush. So just at least 2 brushes ready. And we also need some tissue to dry off our paintbrushes as we're going through. So bits of tissue, probably wouldn't use the loo roll, probably go for kitchen paper or something a bit less valuable. And then you also need a cup of water. So I would definitely get clean water. I've just been painting, so I've got some dirty water, but clean water is definitely going to help you here. And I'm just going to move this back slightly so I can knock my painting off the on the floor. So we're going to start with the background and we'll build up all the layers until we get to something a bit like this. But like I said before, you can change it as much as you like. And because the video is fully interactive and it's a live one, you can comment as much as you like. Or if you feel like you want to take your time with it a bit more, you can pause it as many times as you want to. And then if you pause it, when you play again, it should just carry on from where we left off. So I'm hoping that that's bright enough for you. I might move this a bit closer. I'm going to turn this light down a little bit, just so it's a bit brighter for you guys. There you go. Made a little bit of a difference. So at the end of the painting, it'd be really lovely for us to see your lovely masterpieces. So when you get to the end and you're happy with it, take a photo and tag us on Facebook. So you can tag Brush Party Bristol Gloucestershire, or you can do Brush Party UK. We'll get to see all of them that way. So if you've got any questions, let me know. But we're going to start with the large brush. So grab your biggest background brush you can find. And we're going to start by dipping it in our water. So we're going to start with the moon in the sky. So we need to make sure we've got a big dollop of yellow on our brush to begin with. So I've got a little bit of water and I'm going straight into the paint. So I'm pushing my brush side to side like so. So I've got a nice equal amount of paint all on my brush like this. So I've got loads of nice paint. And I'm going to make my moon really big on the right hand side. So to get this, I'm going to start with my long bristles pointing upwards. But if you've got just a square brush, then you just need to hold it vertically and that will still help. So I'm going to start with my long bristles up. I'm going to push my brush around to make a small circle. And we're just going to make it bigger one bit at a time. So I'm turning my whole brush around so I get a nice spiral shape coming through the brush. And that paint is nice and thick, so it's going to be really bright. I'm going to just push that round. And we're going to make this circle for the moon really, really big because we want it to kind of go behind our cat. So I'm going to pop mine about a quarter of the way down from the top and a quarter of the way in from the side. And that's probably about how tall and wide you want to make it, and then you want to match it going all the way around. So I would do a little marker about a quarter of the way down from the top. That might be a bit less than a quarter, actually. I'm not very good at measurements, so I'm going to say that's a bit less than a quarter, I think. And then same thing on that side. So just a couple of inches or a few centimetres, depending on how big your canvas is. So I'm working on a 16 by 20, so it's quite big. If you're working slightly smaller, then everything obviously will be a bit smaller. But I'll try and keep the measurements as clear as I can. And it doesn't have to be exact at all. It's a very free sort of painting. It doesn't really matter what you do. It will definitely look good with the silhouette on. So I'm topping up my brush every couple of brush strokes and I'm making my circle nice and even all the way around. I'm actually being quite messy with my brush strokes as well, so I'm not being too smooth with anything just yet. I'm loading my brush up, pushing it all the way around. And while the yellow is still wet, we need to add a bit of white to our brush. So I'm just going to grab some neat white. I'm not rinsing it off in between. And I'm going to carry on making my circle bigger by picking up some of that white and carrying on around the outside of that circle. And because it's still quite wet, it is going to pull some of the yellow out, which is good. That's going to help blend our lines in. Then I'm going to add a little bit more white to my brush once I've done that ring. And I'm just going to keep going round so that every time I do another ring around the moon, I've got more and more white on my brush. And you can rinse it off if it's going really, really yellow all the way around. And that will just stop it building up too much on your brush. So if I go too fast or anything, just let me know and I can slow down. But again, you can repeat, you can pause it as many times as you need me to. So I guess I'll be repeating it if you pause it and rewind it. So that should help. So with the white, I'm going around that yellow moon. And I'm kind of, in some places, going into the moon and coming back out again so that I'm sort of picking up some of the yellow and pulling it out. And that's going to help blend everything. And so I'm just going all the way around. We want to make sure it's nice and smooth from where it goes from yellow into that almost white colour. So it goes from like a bright yellow into more of a lemony, pastely, chalky yellow. Then hopefully by the time we get almost to the edges on top and the right hand side, it should be almost nearly white. So I'm going to rinse off my brush one more time. And I'm going to add even more white this time. But for the next one, I'm not going to start directly on this ring. I'm going to start with a little bit of a gap first, so that when I go back in, I'm not going to pick up too much yellow. So I've got a nice bright white circle going around the outside. A nice bright white ring going around the edge. Because when we add the purple in a second, if the purple mixes too much with the yellow, then it's going to go like a bit of a weird colour. So I would, keep loading up your brush with that neat white and make sure that the white is separating the yellow from the rest of the canvas. That when we add the purple in, it's going to have a nice bright glow to it without going too muddy. So adding a bit more white, especially in that top corner. And then if you need to, you can now go back in and blend things a little bit more, just by going over those brush strokes that we've just done. And that'll sort of pick up some of the paint and push it around a bit more, so that it's all nice and evenly spread out and blended. And we can always go back at the end and add a bit more yellow into the moon if you want to make it a bit more crisp. So I'll just bring this a bit closer so you can kind of see what we've got going on. Hope that's not gone too dark. Okay. And so we'll move on to adding in some purple next. And then we're going to go back in afterwards and add some nice yellow dashes going through it, so that it just sort of blends it in a bit more, makes it a bit more interesting. So I'm going to completely rinse my brush off as much as I can. And I'm going to mix up a very, very pale purple colour. So the red and the blue kind of makes not very bright purple, but it does go kind of like a pastely lilac colour. So I would mix equal amounts of red and blue. So to start with, we're going to go very pale, so you don't need much of each. So equal amounts of red and blue, and then mix that round so you get a kind of purplish colour. But obviously, if you have purple at home already, then use purple because that's going to be nice and bright. Or you can use whatever colour you like for background. And then into that purple, I'm picking up lots of white and then mixing it around. So I want to go for a really, really, really pale colour. Can you see how light that is? It's almost just like an off-white colour, so that when we add it in around the moon, it's not going to have a real sharp edge to it. It should just sort of blend in nicely. So I'm scraping my brush off side to side, try and get most of the excess off. Otherwise, it's going to come out really, really thick on our canvas. So for this, we're going to start by leaving a little bit of a gap around that white line that we did earlier. So I'm starting my brush strokes a little bit wider than what we've done for the moon. And I'm just going to do a full circle all the way around in this really light colour. Go all the way around. So it's going off the top of the canvas. And when you do your brush strokes, it's really nice to lift off each way, so that when it comes to blending it in more, you're not going to get these solid lines showing up through your painting. So just keep flicking it off side to side. That's going to look really, really lovely. Don't forget about that top corner as well. And then when we've got that first ring of the purple, we need to go back in with that neat white. So rinse off your brush, neat white. And you want half of your brush on the yellow and half of it on the purple. And you're going to be blending it in by going backwards and forwards, like this, just sort of joining the gap together. And blending is really, really hard, so don't worry if you're struggling a little bit. Just keep sort of practicing and going round and round. And the more paint you add on, the more likely it's going to blend. So I'm just topping my brush up with plenty of white, and then rinse it off every now and then, just to make sure that we're not muddying up the colours too much. So we need to have that nice white in between the two colours, and having a white in there will just smooth the edges a bit more. Okay, so we've got a really nice big glow going on. We've got that first sort of layer of the background in. So I'm going to make another purple just on top of what we've done before. So I'm just going to add a bit more red and blue this time, so a bit less white. And every time we get further towards the edges of the canvas, I'm going to add more and more blue and red together, and less white. So it's getting darker and darker as we're working down the painting. So all down here is going to be really bright with purple. And we're going to do the same thing as before. So I'm starting with a little bit of a gap between my colours. So you need to have quite a bit on your brush actually this time, so that the blending is going to be really good. I'm leaving a bit of a gap. And then when you have done that ring, you want to rinse off your brush again and then blend together. So you want half of your brush on the lighter colour, half of it on the darker colour, and you don't actually need any paint on your brush at this point. So with a slightly watery brush, you can go in and go in between the two colours. And then you can push your brush up slightly, so some of the darker colour is coming just a little bit higher and some of the lighter colours coming down a bit lower. So it's kind of just picking up both of those colours and merging them all together. I hope everyone's okay so far. If you want to get in contact with us and you can't get onto YouTube or anything like that, on the can't log in, then feel free to message us on Facebook. That's a really good way for us to see what you're up to if you're having any problems. Don't forget about that top corner again. And I'm just going to keep going till we fill the edges. So I'm adding more and more blue and red together, getting lower and lower. Oh, see, got a bit too much red in there. So you kind of really need to mix it really well on the canvas, on the palette, before putting it onto your canvas, so you get a nice purple colour coming out. Okay, so it's starting to look really nice now. So I've got plenty of paint on my brush, and we're going to get nice and dark when you get to the bottom corner and the edges. Don't forget about that top corner as well. Okay, so I've got one more row, I think, to do, one more ring. I'm going to bring these brush strokes in a little bit again, so that you're sort of picking up some of the lighter colours, moving it down. And my last layer is going to be even more blue and red mixed together. So it goes nice and dark. So I've got no white in my brush at all at this point. It's just blue and red. It goes really nice, kind of browny purple towards the bottom, so it's really, really dark. It's going to look really great with that silhouette on top. So I'm adding a bit of water to my paint every couple of brush strokes as well, just to make sure that the paint's going to flow easily. And it's always good to just rinse it off to make sure that you don't get too much paint clogged up on your bristles as well. And what will look really lovely is if you fill all the edges of your canvas in with the same colour that you've just been using. So if you're doing a really bright coloured background, then carry it around the sides, and it's going to look really, really striking. Again, if you're doing a darker background in the same colour, or you could do a really bright colour background with really dark edges to make it like a border. But it's totally up to you. And don't forget to get right down to the bottom. Nice long brush strokes at the bottom, so you're using the whole width of the canvas to do your whole brush stroke. And feel free to turn your canvas around if you need to get to the corners that you can't quite reach. So I think I've got a very, very big moon. So we can go back into some of the lighter colours and sort of come back in and make the moon a little bit smaller if you need to. So I'm going to just add a little bit more white back into that purple that I was using. And I'm just going to go back in and just bring it a little bit higher. Make sure you've got plenty of white in there. And then when we add the yellow on top, it's going to sort of join them all together really, really nicely. I might need to turn this round a little bit so I can make sure it's nice and circular. Just be careful you don't go too dark, so you might need to keep topping up your brush with that white. And I'm rinsing it off every now and then to make sure that we've not got too much of that dark paint sticking in our brush. So I'm just adding a little bit more of that light purple back in, just to get the edge of the moon a little bit more crisp. And also making the purple come out a little bit, come into the moon a little bit further. And it's really hard to see if you've got a circle or not, so it's always good to take a step back every couple of minutes or so. Every time we've done like a few brush strokes, take a little step back, see it from a bit of a distance, and also it's really good to take photos as we're going along. So I would, after every single stage, take a step back and admire your painting from a bit of a distance, and yeah, take a photo of it, and then when you get to the end, you'll have a really nice like collage of all your pictures of all your stages, and you can prove to everybody that you painted your amazing painting when you get to the end. You should be so impressed with yourselves. Hopefully, just filling in those little gaps that are showing through. So if you've not quite put enough paint on your paintbrush, then you might find that as the paint starts to dry, some of the little white dots start showing through again. So just go over those bits if you need to. I need to top up my white paint. It's getting a little bit dirty. Yes, I hope everyone's okay so far. I'm going to use a little bit of neat white on my brush now, just to add in a couple of highlights throughout the moon, so it's not just a solid yellow colour. So throughout my moon, I'm kind of going to just add a couple of little flicks of white going around, kind of in a spirally sort of shape, so it just sort of blends in some of that yellow. Just sort of adding a nice little spiral in here. And we can add a couple of these white highlights and things into the background as well. So if you turn your brush on its side, or whichever way the brush strokes are going, so if you're filling in this little part, you want your brush horizontal, so in here. And we're just going to add in a couple of flicks going into our background, just to add a bit more of that glow, a bit more detail into the sky. And if you're going down the sides, you want your brush vertical. So you're just sort of holding the brush whichever way the paint is flowing on the canvas. So I'm not adding stripes necessarily, I'm just sort of adding a few brush strokes that sort of overlapping each other and blending these colours in a bit more. So if you've got some really strong lines which show the changes of colour, then use these white dashes to sort of break them up a little bit. And we're going to do the same with yellow in a second. So you don't want to do too many of these, maybe a couple just in the darker bits. So we're just adding lots of texture to our background to make it look nice and interesting. And then you can rinse off your brushes again. So we're still carrying on with our background brush. And yeah, definitely take a picture of the stage. And then we're going to go back to our yellow, but I'm going to make it a lot lighter. So I'm grabbing a little bit of white and I'm going to mix it in with some yellow. So we're going for a nice lemon kind of yellow. So it's a little bit lighter than what we started with. And I'm just going to do the same thing as we did with the white. So I'm holding my brush on its side. I'm going to add in a couple of flicks, just breaking up some of those white lines. So sort of bringing the moon out a little bit and sort of blending it a bit more. So it's not so smooth, it's kind of breaking it up. But also blending it in with the rest of it. If that makes sense. Probably doesn't make sense. I'm just waffling. Okay, so we've got lots of texture going around our moon now. So I'm hoping that they're all looking fabulous so far. Just flick that brush. You've got a couple of lighter bits in the moon in there. So our moon hasn't got a very solid edge. It's kind of, as it gets wider and wider, it starts breaking up and blending into the rest of the sky. I'm just going to bring this a little bit closer so you can kind of see it. And if we need to pause the video, then you can pause it so you can see it a bit closer up. We can go back through any bits at the end if you want to go back to a slightly brighter moon with a bit more yellow in there, you can. We can do those right at the end. We can go back through any bits that need to. So it's always good to not overwork your canvases. So when you've done those brush strokes, I would take a big step back, take a picture, have a look at what we've achieved so far. I'm hoping they're all fabulous. So after we've done the moon, we need to add in all these lovely bubbles and things in the sky. So I'm going to rinse off my brush. And I'm actually going to put my large brush to one side. So I'm going to do a bit of finger painting next. So I'm rinsing off that brush and I would dry it off as well because that will really help with cleaning your brushes later. So get all the paint off, dry it off as well and pop it to one side. So these dots can be any colour. So I'm going to do yellow and white mixed together. So that really pale colour we used. And I'm going to do some that are yellow and then some that are white by itself. So it might be good to actually use the brush to mix up the colour on the palette first, and then you can dip your finger in and add these circles in. So I'm going to mix a bit more of my yellow and white together. And then we can wipe that brush. Again, maybe rinse it off. Pop it down again. So there's a lot of cleaning your brushes as we're going through, but it'll definitely help in the long run. So I'm going to dip my finger into my lemon yellow that I've got going on. You need quite a lot of paint on your finger as well, so load it up quite a lot. And then I'm just going to pop my finger on the canvas and I'm going to push it round in a spiral shape, getting bigger and bigger. And then when I'm happy with the size, I'm going to stop. And then you can just take a little step back, make sure it's nice and circular. See that mine's not, I've got a little straight bit in there. Smooth it off. There we go. So I would do a couple with this really bright lemon colour. And then if you want to do a few smaller ones, what's going on with my words today? A few smaller ones, just do slightly smaller circles so you're not spreading your finger out so much. So I would do these really big down the sides, and as you get higher up, I would probably start making them a bit smaller. So a bit more on your finger, and then just dot it and lift off. So if you want really, really small dots, I would get a really small amount of paint on your brush and just very lightly press it on and lift off again. So don't worry about moving your finger around in this circle if you want some smaller ones. And they can actually overlap each other as well. So I would overlap them with a slightly different colour. So I might do a white one in a second, overlapping that big one down there. But we'll do that in a min. So I'm doing a few more of these lemon kind of colours, pastel-y yellow. And I'm going to do a few smaller ones. The gaps. Need to have a couple down here as well. So try and make them really, what's the word? Not very symmetrical. So I would do a couple that are really close together and others that are a bit more spread apart. So as you can see, I've actually done mine all in twos. So I'm going to break that up a bit. And I'm going to add a third one right in here that's going to go off the edge of my canvas. It's going to be a lot bigger. So switch up the groups. Maybe have a couple that have got 3 or 4 in, others that are just one by itself. And just, yeah, keep adding these in all around the moon. You might want to do a couple on that side if you want to. So when you've done all the bright yellow colours, you can use yellow by itself, and you can use white by itself, and you can use whatever colour you like. So I'm going to do a few smaller yellow ones in there. You can really load up your finger. Plenty of paint. And that'll look really, really nice. And it's a really good way to get a nice, neat edge on your circles. So if you're getting a really fuzzy edge around the sides, it might be that you've just not got enough paint on your finger. And if you don't fancy finger painting, then another way to get these circles is to use a slightly smaller brush. So if you have a cropped brush, which is this one with a diagonal edge, then you can get a little bit of paint on both sides of your brush. And you can hold it up first, so your long bristles are pointing up, and you can move the whole brush around like the hand of a clock and join it back up at the top. Go back the other way. And that's a really easy way to get a circle with the brush. And if you've not got one of these and you've got one like this, so rounded brush, then you can just start with a very small dot and then make it bigger and bigger by just moving the brush around. And then you can neaten up the edges just by pushing all the bristles together. So sort of moving the brush around to make a circle. Right, so I think I'm happy with my yellows in there. So I'm going to add some white ones in now. So these ones are really going to stand out against the background and look really bright. So these ones, like I said before, we can overlap them. So with white on my finger or on the brush, whichever way you're doing, I'm actually going to just cross those two in front of each other. I'm going to make one just a little bit bigger. And it just sort of makes it a bit more complex. It looks really nice. Like that. And then filling in a few more of these gaps with a bit more white. That was a very big one up there. I think this one I'm going to make white. So I'd love to see all of your paintings with all these different colours in there. So if you are feeling really creative, change the colours as much as you like. You don't have to do what I'm doing. I'll add a few little ones sort of going into the moon a little bit. And I'm not doing too many in this section over here on the left-hand side because that's where our cat's going to go. So you don't want to do your best circles over here because you're going to cover it over later on. So do your best ones all around the edges and down the side. And then if you want to do even smaller ones, we can use the wooden edge of the brush. So I'm going to clean my finger off. I'm going to use the large brush. I'm going to turn it the other way around. So we're using the wooden part. And I'm going to grab a little bit of white just on the end. And I'm going to dot in some of these gaps. And this is a good way to get some really small dots in there. You can actually make a little bit of a pattern if you wanted to. So you can have them all kind of going in a row and twisting around each other. And you can move your brush around in a little circle to make them a little bit bigger. But this This is really easy to get carried away with. So when you've done a couple, take a little step back from your painting, see what's what, then you can come back to it whenever you want to. So I wouldn't actually do too many of these ones. You don't want to make the background too busy. I say as I keep going. So I'm going to just 1 or 2 more at the top, down the sides. Yes, I think I'm happy with that. Again, another photo stop. So take a little picture of where we're at so far. I've got too many over here. Okay, so yeah, take a little step back, take a picture, and admire your masterpiece so far. So the next bit we're going to do is add in the silhouette for the cat. So if you want to take a little break, you can, and we will do the step-by-step for the cat nice and slowly, and we'll just build them up one shape at a time. So we're just going to start with a straight line going right down the middle, and then we'll add the bottom part in, and then the middle section, and then his head and neck and ears. So we'll just do it all step by step, so don't panic. It does look a lot harder than it is. So yeah, rinse off all your brushes for now, and if you need to top up any other colours, then go for it. So we're going to be using black next, so make sure you've got plenty of black still on your palette. Give your brushes a good rinse through, pop them to one side. And I just hope everyone's okay. So the next bit we'll do, we will use the smaller chisel brush, so the medium-sized brush. And if you've not got one of these, then you can use the background brush still, and that'll work just as well, just to get the outline in. And then we can use a slightly smaller brush to get all of his fur in as well. Right, so we need to give our canvases a bit of a dry, actually, because our dots are quite thick. Well, mine are very thick with paint. We need to flap our canvases a bit. So I'm actually going to hold it this way round so my dots can dry. I'm going to hold it around the edges, and I'm going to flap it about. So if you've got the music on at home, then have a little boogie, stand up, have a dance, get these nice and dry. And yeah, as soon as it's dry, oh my gosh, don't drop your paintings or anything like that, because that would be disastrous. Yeah, so we'll move on to the cat next. So make sure they're nice and dry. If you have a hairdryer to hand, then that's going to be very helpful to dry them a bit quicker. Or you can have a break and come back whenever you're ready. Okay. Let's get a little workout this. So I'll just show you all my dots a bit closer so that you can kind of see what we've got going on down here. And then they get smaller and smaller towards the top. And if you've got any gold paint at home, then that would look really, really nice, especially in these dots. Look really, really great. And glitter as well. Glitter in these dots will look really nice. So I think if you have glitter, I would do them in the dots and maybe on his little nose as well. That would look good. And that's the moon as well. So you can see all those lines, but it's not too smooth. And hopefully your dot should be a little bit drier by now. If not, then keep flapping. To flap mine a little bit more. A few more seconds. Backdrop's coming in done. And yeah, we're going to move on to the black. So I'm going to use my cropped brush, which is this one. I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. And I'm going to grab some black. So with my black, I'm going to mix in this water. And I'm going to press my brush side to side so that all the water is kind of blending in and mixing up with the paint. Because if it's not quite mixed in fully, then when you go to put it on, it's going to get a big white drip all the way down. So you don't want to do that, really. So make sure it's all mixed in together, the water, and the black. Okay, so our cat can be as big as you like. I'm going to kind of copy this one because I think that it's big enough. I might make it just a little bit shorter so you can see a bit more of the moon. So my top of my cat, we're going to go right from the top of his head all the way down, just so we know we're going to have enough space to fit him on, or her on, whichever you want to have. So I'm going to start mine about a third of the way down, and I'm going to bring it across about a quarter, a third as well. Yes, a third of the way down and a third of the way in. I think about that. So I think that's about a third of the way in. So it's in this top section about here. Is that a third? I don't know. But that's roughly where we're putting it. So mine's kind of just about, just on the edge of my moon. So we just need to make sure we've got a little bit of a gap on the edge so we've got enough space for his head to go in. And that will be fine. So let's measure that up on there. Yeah, that's fine. So my long bristles, if you've got one of these brushes, is going to be facing up. And I'm going to start from my dot and I'm going to do a straight line all the way down to the bottom of the canvas. And that is going to be the line that's going straight from the top of his head all the way down to here, to the bottom. It's quite a big cat. I said I was going to do it smaller and I haven't done exactly the same size. That's fine. So for the bottom part of his body, it's going to be about a third of the way up. So this one is definitely a third of the way up. So I'm going to do a little marker, about a third of the way up. So parents, if you've got children painting with you, you might want to help with all these measurements. Not that they're clear at all, but I would go and just help them out a little bit. So from a third of the way up in the middle of this line here, I'm going to drag my line out to the sides and down. So I'm adding in a kind of half circle. It's a bit more straight down the edges in a half circle. So it's a little bit more of a half an oval shape actually. It's gone very dark. Okay. And it comes in just a couple of centimeters from the left hand corner at the bottom. And then the same thing going the other way. And the good thing is once we've got these basic shapes on, we can then join them all up with a smoother line and add a few more bumps in there. And we'll add all the hair on the outside as well. So this is just the basic shape to make sure he kind of looks like a cat. Then I'm going to match it on the other side, so it's coming out the same width. I'm filling that in, so I'm going to fill this section using the flat part of my brush, so I'm getting the most out of it. Add a bit more water into that paint. And get a good thick layer of black paint on there. Okay, so kind of have like what's that look like? I don't know, it's like a half oval shape. Hopefully you can kind of see that. So I've got a little bit of a gap in this corner. And we'll go at the end and we'll make these lines come out a little bit wider and things in some places. So the next shape on top is like a longer half an oval. So I'm going to go same sort of distance. So measure what you've got down here. I'm going to do the same thing on top. Maybe just a little bit shorter than what you've got. So measure it with your brush or with your hand. And I'm going to make it just a little bit shorter. And here. I'm going to do a little mark. Just so we've got enough space for our neck and our head to go in as well. And then from this line, I'm going to repeat the same thing as before, but they're just going to be a little bit steeper. So it's not going to come out as wide. I'm going to join it in to the side down here. You can fill it in a bit at a time if you want to. If you're getting a bit confused about what shape's going to wear, and fill them in one bit at a time. Get to it. And then again, same thing on the other side. Pushing it out and down. So it's like a squished oval shape, but you're just not seeing the bottom half of the oval fully. Hope everyone's okay so far. Remember, if you've got any questions, feel free to message us on Facebook. I don't want anyone to get stuck or not be happy with their paintings. And then for our head, it's kind of like a rugby ball shape. So the top of our line is going to be the middle at the top of his head. So I would start from here, and I would do a small half a rugby shape going out to the side first, and then in. We want to make sure we leave at least a couple or an inch or so between the bottom of his face and his neck. So I would just do a small half a rugby ball shape first. And we can always make it bigger if we need to, but it's better to start small and make it bigger than it is to start really big, because it's really hard to make things small once they're on there. So we're kind of going for like an ET sort of shape. It kind of looks like ET. So picture his head. That's literally the same thing. I promise it does look better in a minute. So match it on the other side. Make sure it's nice and symmetrical. It looks so strange. Okay, and we just need to smooth out the neck as well. So I'm just going to make this a little bit wider on the sides. So take a step back and see how big you need to make it, or if you've got a bit too big, then you might need to make the body a little bit bigger. So I wouldn't try and make the head smaller, because that's going to be really, really hard to do. So just make the rest of the body a bit bigger if you need to. So I think it's kind of actually the edge of my head for now is kind of in line, almost in line with the edge of the bottom half of the cat. And then fill that in. Make sure it's nice and equal. Wonky head coming on there. Okay, so when we've got that shape on, then we need to make his neck a little bit thicker in the middle. So I'm going to hold my brush vertically, and I'm going to just smooth in this line for his neck. So I don't want it to be too thick, because it's quite a stylized cat look. Okay, so he's got quite a thick neck actually, that's fine. I'm just smoothing that around a little bit, so it's not like it's just stuck on top. I've kind of curved those edges in a little bit, just so it's a bit smoother. Okay, so it's starting to look a bit more cat-like and a bit kind of less ET-like, which is fine. So from here, we need to add in his ears. So they're just little triangles with curved edges sitting on the edges at the top of his head. So I'm going to make mine about an inch in height, but you can make them as big or as small as you like. So I'm starting my long bristles pointing up. I'm going to start kind of towards the edge of my head, and I'm going to curve my line out to the side and join it in. And then same thing going the other way. So it's a nice rounded triangle on top. And then same thing on the other side. So make sure they're kind of in the same place on both sides of his head. So curving that line out. And in my cat has got some big ears. And he looks cute. Okay, so definitely take a step back at this point, see where we're at. And yeah, take a picture as well, because we're going to start adding the fur, and that's going to really change it up a bit. Well, we'll add the fur in a second. We need to sort out his body a bit more. So at the minute, you can see the blocks of where the shapes sort of like built on top of each other. So we just need to smooth things off a little bit. So I'm going to start. Okay. So I'm going to start from the edge of my top shape, and I'm going to drag my brush down. So I'm using my short bristles to lead the way. So I'm holding it vertically. And then as I get to my second shape at the bottom, I'm going to just smooth out the line so it sort of curves out and then joins back in again. So it's rather than having that sharp corner in there, I'm smoothing it out and pushing it out a bit more. Yeah. And I'll show you on the other side as well so that you can actually see it, because I can see that's a little bit dark. So I'll show you on the right hand side, hopefully you'll be able to see it okay. So I'm starting at the top and I'm just making the shape blend a little bit more. So I'm just smoothing out that corner in there. And you can actually curve it around a bit more. So I'm making mine just a little bit wider, and a bit of a curve, making it look like a little bit more cat-like. So it kind of looks like kind of like a pear shape, kind of ish. So I've made my right hand side a little bit more rounded, because that's where his tail's going to be. So it kind of looks like he's almost on its side slightly. So it's a bit of diagonal. And then my left hand side is a little bit straighter. Okay. I've got quite a fat cat actually. He's quite big. I've got a bit carried away though of making him curvier. Alright, anyways, so the next thing to do is add in his tail, and then we can start adding in all the fur to make him look nice and fluffy. So I'm going to use the smallest brush that you've got. So I'm going to use my number 6 brush. But again, if you've not got the brush party set, then you just want the smallest brush that you've got. I'm going to dip it in water, and I'm going to carry on with the black. So this is going to have a nice curly tail. So I'm going to start right at the point of his tail, and I'm going to bring it round and join it in to the base of his body. So I'm going to start with a little dot where I want my tail to finish. So I'm going to make it go kind of in line with the base of his neck. I'm going to start right in here. I'm not sure if you can see that dot, so it's right here. And from there, I'm going to add a line that's going to curve up and all the way around like a little spiral. And it's almost as if I'm going to join back in to do a circle, but I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go all the way down and join the bottom of his body. So I'll just do it really, really slowly so you can see. I'm lifting it up, curving it around. Don't worry if it's not smooth, because we're going to add lots of fur to it. And then all the way up. And I'm going to curve it back out to the side a little bit. And then finish off by joining it in to the bottom of his body. And then we can just make it a little bit thicker at the base of his body. So the base of the tail needs to be nice and thick. Because I've got such a big body on mine, I need to make my tail like in proportion. So mine's gonna have a really big fluffy tail going on. And then as you get towards that curly bit in the end, it just needs to get a little bit thinner and thinner. Very gradually. So I'm just using the same brush. Okay, so it's starting to look nice and cat-like, which is fabulous. So from here, I'm going to add his whiskers in next while we're using the small brush. So I'm going to add a bit more water and I'm going to roll it around in my black. So I'm holding it on its side and I'm rolling it round to make sure that all my bristles are completely covered in black. And it's going to mean that I'm going to get a nice crisp line when I do these. So these are going to start pretty much the same way as we did our tail. So I'm going to start from the tip of the whisker. I'm going to curve it out and join back in. So I'm actually going to do 3 on both sides. I think I kind of forgot to do the other ones though. So I'm going to start just a little bit wider than his face, or her face. And I'm going to start with a little dot. And then from that dot, I'm going to curve my whiskers in towards his face first. And then curve it out. And then I'm going to go all the way around. And join it in. They kind of need to start by joining into like the halfway down his face. I'm going to do a couple more. So I might do an even bigger one. In here. And then my last one, I'm going to sort of angle and point a different way. So I'm going to start down here and curve the opposite way. We've got 3 nice big whiskers. And then same thing on the other side. So they don't have to be symmetrical. You can have them going a little bit different on this side. So I'm going to make mine go down a little bit further. So I'm going to angle them a little bit different. So again, we're going to start from the edge. So start from the curly bit. I'm curving it in towards his face first. And then spiraling it round. Lifting it up. And then you probably can't really see it. There we go. I might do a small one in here, kind of overlapping. Just make it a little bit different. I'm going to do one more curving the other way, just like this one down here. And you can add as many whiskers in as you like. Because cats do have lots and lots of whiskers. And they don't all have to be curly as well. You can have a couple of straight ones in there if you wanted to. Get back over this little one. It looks a little bit skinny. Okay, now it's got a nice thick, looks like a mustache, that one. So from here, we need to add in all of his fur. So you can either use your cropped brush or your small detail brush that we've just used for his whiskers and his tail. So I find it easier with the cropped brush because I think you can get a flick a lot easier, but you can use the rounded one and with the same brush stroke, you'll get the same effect. So I need to add a bit more water to my paint and I'm going to grab a bit more paint on my brush. So I'm mixing it round. So I'm getting all the paint on both sides of the brush. I'm going to scrape it off so we've not got too much paint on there. And for all the fur, you always want your long bristles pointing inside his body. So your short bristles are leading the way and they're facing the outside. So you always want the long bristles pointing into his body. So So I'm going to start with the ears first, just because I'm going to start at the top and work my way down. So my long bristles are pointing down. And if you've not got a cropped brush and you just want to use your number 6 brush or whatever small brush you have, and you just need to lead with your handle. So if you're using the small brush, start with your handle pointing the way you want to go and start your brush stroke right inside the silhouette, and then you can flick your brush up. It's a good way to get first. So I'll just show you a bit closer. So this is if you're using number 6 ground brush. So you're starting with your lines, starting with your brush inside, and then flicking it out. And curving it if you need to, so you can turn the brush all different directions. Okay, so just giving a bit of texture. So if you're not using that brush and you're using the cropped brush, then long bristles pointing in. And I wouldn't add fur all the way around the outside. It's quite nice just to add it in a few places. Otherwise it's going to look very, very scraggly. So you kind of want all the fur in the tail to be nice and as if he's kind of seen something, like he's scared of something. That would be quite nice. But the rest of it, I would just do a couple of flicks just to show that he is a fluffy cat. So especially on the whisker bits and then in the ears as well. I'm not doing too much to it. And I might add a couple of bits of fur to his shoulders. So I'm going to hold my brush all the way around so my long bristles are pointing down. And I'm just flicking it out. And then as we get lower and lower, I'm kind of curving my brush down a little bit. So his fur is going out and down. And it will look quite nice in the curve where it goes into his legs. There we go. And probably wouldn't do too many. Maybe do a couple more down one on the left hand side. And then we can start on his tail. So for the tail, again, you want your long bristles pointing inside, and then you're flicking it off on a bit of a diagonal. So they're not sticking straight out. They're kind of going almost the same direction as the tail. They're just flicking off the sides slightly. So long bristles pointing in. And you're just sort of like curving it out in some places. And then as you get further around, those lines, the hairs can start going out at a bit more of an angle. When you get right to the end, you've got a nice full curl in there. So the lines are almost sort of like joining up in the middle. And then the same thing going the other way. So keep going. So they don't all have to go in exactly the same direction. So it might look quite nice if a couple of them do actually go out more like more of an angle. So it kind of breaks up the fur a little bit and it's not all smooth. I might leave this side actually a little bit smoother. Bottom bit a bit more fluffy. So it doesn't have to be all the way around, it can just be in a couple of places. Okay, so from here we need to add in his eyes and his nose. So for this I'm going to use my smallest brush, so my little rounded brush, and we need to mix up a very pale yellow. So if you've not got the colour from earlier still there, then just mix a bit more up. So I'm going to grab yellow and white together and mix it round. Make sure you've not got any black on your brush, so give it a good rinse off. Otherwise the black will make it go bright green, so be careful with that black. And these eyes are kind of like, again, like rugby ball shapes. So the two dots on the inside are going to mark the insides of his eyes. So these are going to sit halfway up his face, and I'm going to do two little dots a couple of centimetres apart from each other. So it looks really strange at this point, but don't worry, it will all make sense in a second. And then we've got two more dots just inside from the edge of his ears. So just inside, kind of in line the bottoms of his ears. And then from there we can join them up with a straight line. So my two dots on the right are going to join up with a line, and the other side. So at the minute he looks like a very evil cat. So we need to make him look a little bit cuter by rounding it off. So this is where the rugby ball shape comes into play. So I'm going to have my tip of my brush pointing to that first dot. My handle is pointing away, and I'm going to pull it up, add in half, a circle, fill it in, and join it up to the top one. And then same thing going the other way underneath. So long brush is pointing in. I'm going to curve it out and up. And then make sure it's nice and equally filled in. And then try and make it nice and symmetrical on the other side. My cat's got some big eyes. Very, very big. Yeah, so rinse off the brush, make sure it's not too clogged up with paint. And then same thing going the other way. Try and make them as equal as you can. It's always good to turn your canvas upside down, and that's a really good way to see if it's symmetrical or not. So when you've done it, I would take a little picture. Take a picture and turn it upside down as well. Gosh, there we go. So I think that's symmetrical. Not sure. Okay, and then turn it upside down, and you'll be able to see which bits aren't quite matching up. So I can see that this one is a little bit bigger. I think that's a little bit more symmetrical. So they kind of look like lemons, actually. Rugby balls, lemons, whichever you find easier to picture. And from there, we're going to add his little nose in. So I'm going to rinse off my brush. And I'm going to grab some neat white. Or you can do a pink nose if you want to. I'm going to stick with white. And like I said before, if you want to add glitter, I would add it to the nose. I think that would look really lovely. And the glitter will just stick to the wet paint. So his nose is just a little heart in between his eyes, but just placed a little bit lower. So I'm going to do a little dot just right in between his eyes, just a little bit lower. That's going to be the top of my heart-shaped nose, and I'm going to push it out one side and drag it back in. So that's one half of my heart. And then same thing going the other side, the other way. And again, I would turn it upside down. Oh dear. Make sure it's symmetrical. I think it nearly is. Just use the very tip of the brush. I'm hoping that that is okay. Yes. Okay, and then from there we've just got the two pupils to add in his eyes. So we need to make sure that our eyes are very dry. So might need to do another couple of seconds flapping. And we've got two last little bits to add. Make sure it's nice and dry, so it doesn't smudge. And it would look quite nice actually if we add a little bit of a highlight to his tail. So it might look good if we add in a couple of lighter grey or a dark grey just to the tips of his tail to make it look a little bit lighter. Add a little bit of a highlight to that bit as well, and it will help just define the edge of the body as well a little bit. So when your eyes are dry, we're going to carry on with that same small brush and a little bit of black. And we're running out of black. And we're just going to add in two really squished lemon shapes in his eyes. So I'm going to start right in the middle at the top on both sides to try and make sure they're in the same place. And then mine are kind of going out on a bit of an angle, so it follows the same sort of angle as his eyes. So my next one is going to be in line with it down here. So it's kind of on the widest parts of his eyes, and make sure again they're going the same sort of way. And how freaky does that look? Four pupils. Okay, and then we're going to join them together with two straight lines. So leading with the handle part of the brush, you're dragging the bristles behind you. And then once we've got those straight lines in, we can make them look a little bit friendlier by rounding off both sides. So just like we did when we added the eyes in, we're just adding in a half a circle or half a lemon shape first. Make mine just a little bit wider. And then same thing on the other side. So that's one half of the eye done. And then the other half. And make sure it's nice and equal on both sides. A little bit more black. And then repeat it on his other eye. There we go. Again, remember to turn it upside down if you need to. It's not quite symmetrical, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Then turn it back the other way around. Everything's all good. It's kind of looking this way actually, isn't it? I think I might need to make this side just a little bit bigger. There we go. That will do. And then from here we can add a couple of highlights in his tail, and then we'll sign our paintings, because that's pretty much everything for our lovely Mystic Mog painting. So I'm going to carry on with my same small brush, and I'm just going to mix up a very, very dark grey. So I'm going to grab some white and I'm going to mix it into a little bit of black. So going for very, very dark grey. So it's not going to show up too much at all. We don't want it to be too bold. I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. And then just on the top half of his tail, I'm just going to add a couple of flicks on top. So I'm going to do mine just a little bit lighter so that you can see it, but you do want to keep your greys really dark. So I'm just show you the slightly lighter colour. So just adding in a couple of highlights. But again, make sure it's really, really dark so you're not really seeing it too bright. So I'm going to go, then you might do a couple of little ones in here. Just to add a little bit of a highlight to the side that's facing the moon. I'd definitely do it with a very, very dark grey. And then for the top of his tail as well. So you just want to do it in a couple of places. It's not like one solid line of highlights, kind of just a couple in a few different places. And I'm going to add a couple of highlights at the top of his tail. I'm hoping you can kind of see that, but we don't want it to stand out too much. So if it's too bright, then just add a little bit of black back over the top, and that'll tone it down a little bit. So you've added in a couple of highlights. The most important part of your painting is to sign away. So I would use your small brush that we've just been using, or you can use a chalk pen or a Sharpie or something just to make it your own. Oh, we actually have a bit of grass left to add on. One last little bit. I forgot about the grass. So you can either use your small detail brush or your cropped brush. And we're going to carry on with black. It's nice and easy this bit, don't worry. So I'm going to carry on with black. I'm going to use my small brush. And along the bottom, I'm just going to flick my brush up and add in a couple of blades of grass just to fill it in a little bit more on the bottom. So again, I'll bring that a bit closer so you can see. Got a very creaky chair today. So I'm just lifting it up. Might need a bit more paint on the brush. And they're kind of crossing over each other. Yeah. And then you might just see a couple on the left-hand side sticking out by his fur. Okay, so then when you've done those bits, you can sign your painting. That is the most important part. So if you need to go back through and watch any other bits, if you've missed something, or if you want to add something extra, then go for that now. So you can go back through any bits you need to. And definitely add glitter if you've got glitter. You can always add a bit more stuff to the moon. Like you can add some more brush strokes in there, add some glitter. Definitely add a bit of glitter to the nose if you've got some. And then sign your painting. And the painting looks really nice if you sign it in the bottom corners. But if you're giving your painting away to someone, it's quite nice to write a little message on the back. But you don't have to do that. And it would be really great, like I said before, if you could share your paintings with us and tell your friends, get them to join us online. So this is like a new venture for us, obviously, with everything that's going on. So we love your feedback. We like to hear how you found the event, if you enjoyed it. If there's things you want us to improve on, then that's also good to hear, because we wanted to make it as good as we can without it being our normal public event. So all feedback's welcome. Please send pictures in. I really want to see what you've created. And I'm just going to leave this on for a little bit longer. I'm going to bring this just a little bit closer so you can see those paintings. And they're a little bit different to each other. So this cat's obviously a little bit bigger. He's got a bit more fur on him. But you can, add any bits that you want to. You can add some more whiskers. Don't make them as lopsided as mine. I'm going to add a few more whiskers on that one in a second. Thanks, Alan. Hope you're well. So yeah, all feedback's welcome, and thank you for joining us online. I hope you all enjoyed it. I'm going to finish the stream now. So yeah, rewatch it as many times as you need to. So thanks very much.